I can still hear it, the snap of her ribs breaking. Not loud, but sharp, like a rifle cracking across the quiet. People like to say war leaves its scars on distant battlefields. They're wrong. Sometimes it finds you again years later, right on your own driveway. It should have been just another Saturday morning in Brookhaven Hills, Texas, a sleepy suburb where the loudest sounds were usually lawnmowers or delivery trucks. After 7 years out of the Navy SEALs, I tried to bury the soldier inside me. No more sandstorms or gunfire, just neat lawns and weekend cookouts. I told myself I'd learned how to breathe again. That morning, sunlight poured down in a warm haze, burning away the mist. I was out front with a sponge in one hand, hose in the other, washing my old Ford F-150. Water hissed across the silver paint, catching the light like melted glass. For once, I almost felt normal. Then Sarah came out of the SUV, my wife of 12 years, wearing that pale blue sundress I loved. The soft cotton swayed in the breeze, her dark hair loose around her shoulders, sunlight glinting off it just like the first day I saw her smile. She balanced grocery bags, milk, bread, peaches from the farmer's market, humming some old-style tune under her breath. I remember pausing, leaning on the hose, just watching her longer than I should have. Even in the ordinary, she carried something worth protecting. She caught me staring and laughed. "Not helping at all, sailor," she teased. "I'm supervising," I grinned. "It's an important job." But as she walked past, humming, I saw that little crease between her brows, the one that showed up when something bothered her. While she was setting the bags on the porch, she glanced back. "I saw that same gray Malibu again last night," she said. "Slow rolled past the house around 11. Third time this week." I set the hose down, water dripping onto the hot concrete, and scanned the street before shrugging. Probably a delivery driver lost in these winding streets. Her brow furrowed deeper. "Ethan, packages keep disappearing. The Willis's doorbell camera died 2 days ago. Doesn't that sound off?" I try to keep it light. "I notice things, hon. If it's a real threat, I'll see it coming. Today's too pretty to borrow trouble." She sighed, almost a laugh. "I just don't like feeling watched." I wanted to tell her I felt it too, the prickle at the back of my neck when headlights slowed near our driveway, but swallowed it. She'd already lived through too many sleepless nights while I was overseas. She deserved peace. I turned the hose back on, aiming at the truck tires, but my eyes kept scanning the street the way they once swept rooftops in Fallujah. Another half hour slipped by in that familiar suburban rhythm, water on chrome, a lawn mower buzzing 2 houses down, kids laughing over a bouncing basketball. If you'd asked me then, I'd have said life couldn't get better. But Sarah's voice tugged me back. She was crouched by the SUV, rearranging groceries. "You always think I worry too much," she murmured. "But one day, you're going to wish you'd listened." I grinned. "That's why I married you. Someone's got to keep me paranoid." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I wish now I'd listened harder. The air smelled of fresh-cut grass and barbecue charcoal somewhere down the street. I remember thinking how alive everything felt. The world looked harmless. It wasn't. Behind a stand of oaks, a gray Malibu idled quietly. 2 men sat inside, patient as predators. The first rule in the field is trust your point man. At home, my point man was Sarah. That morning, I broke the first rule. People think coming home from war means leaving the fight behind. It doesn't. The fight just moves into your head. Even after 7 years, I still caught myself scanning rooftops, reading strangers' body language, listening to the rhythm of footsteps behind me. Those habits never went away. They hummed under the skin like a low-voltage current. Sarah knew some of it. She'd lived with my flinches every time a car backfired. But there were things I never told her. The smell of the air before an IED, nights moving through alleys unsure of the next corner. I didn't want that world spilling into our kitchen over coffee. Her scars were different. Years before we met, she'd been caught in a grocery store holdup. A kid with a gun, a bullet shattering the ceiling light, glass raining down as people screamed. Even now, a slammed door could make her flinch. We sometimes joked we made one whole, slightly broken person, me with my combat reflexes, her with the quiet bravery of surviving chaos without training. But it wasn't always a joke. There were nights she'd wake from a dream, breathless, while I lay there counting seconds like I used to before a breach, wondering if we'd ever feel normal again. That Saturday morning was supposed to prove we had. The house was ours. The lawn was neat. The air smelled of grass and peaches and paper bags. It felt like the life we'd promised each other. Ordinary, safe, untouchable. Yet under it all, the habits stayed. When I picked up the paper, I still glanced over my shoulder. Taking out the trash at night, I swept the hedges with my eyes. I thought I hid it well, but Sarah always noticed. Later, while I was drying the truck's mirrors, she came out to water the hanging ferns. "You still don't sleep right," she said without looking at me. "I hear you up at 2, walking around. Just restless," I shrugged. "Comes with age. You think you're protecting me by pretending you're okay," she said. "But sometimes it feels like you're still out there waiting for something to go wrong." She wasn't wrong. A soldier's ears never stop listening for trouble. I wanted her to believe I'd laid it all down, even when I hadn't. She changed the subject softly. "After that kid with the gun at the store, I told myself I'd never freeze again. But I still jump when I hear a bang. It makes me feel weak." I put the rag down, stepped closer, touched her arm. "You're not weak. You stayed standing. That's stronger than you think." She gave me a small, real smile. In that moment, the distance between us shrank, the ghosts of our past stepping back for a while. We didn't know that hours later, those shadows would walk right up our driveway. The warning signs were there: vanishing packages, a dead doorbell camera, the same car circling at night. We saw the pieces but didn't put them together. Not until it was too late. It started small. Neighbors griping during morning walks. Packages stolen off porches. At first, we blamed delivery drivers. Then the Willis's new doorbell camera went dead overnight. 2 streets over, someone's lawn tools disappeared. I chalked it up to petty theft. Teenagers, maybe. But Sarah sensed something meaner moving under the surface. One night, a week before that Saturday, I went out to take the trash. The moon made the hedges silver. A gray Malibu crept around the corner with its headlights dimmed, pausing by our driveway for a heartbeat before rolling on. I stood there holding the trash can lid longer than I needed, listening to it fade. When I went back inside, Sarah was watching me from the kitchen window. "The next morning over coffee," she said quietly, "that's the same car I saw last night around 11. It stopped at the Petersons, then pulled away when I looked out." I told her it was probably nothing. I didn't tell her I'd already memorized the shape of its taillights. The days leading up to the attack felt like that tense calm before the desert wind shifts. I noticed little things: a cigarette butt left by our mailbox 2 mornings in a row. Footprints in the damp soil by the side gate that didn't match ours. The latch on the back fence half unhooked. I fixed it and said nothing. Old habits die hard, but so does denial. Sarah's unease became visible. She double-checked the locks before bed, something I used to do quietly. She kept glancing at the street whenever a car drove by slower than usual. Her worry pressed against the calm I was trying to maintain. 3 days before everything happened, we sat on the porch swing watching the sky turn red over the rooftops. She leaned her shoulder against mine. "Something's coming, Ethan," she whispered. "I don't know what it is, but it doesn't feel like kids stealing packages." I chuckled, forcing lightness. "You've been watching too many crime shows." But even as I teased her, my eyes followed a delivery van until it vanished down the block. My instincts were already awake, pacing like a caged dog. I just kept them on a leash. A day later, I saw a half-torn flyer on the community bulletin board warning about imposters posing as utility inspectors. No signature. I meant to mention it to Sarah but didn't. Maybe I didn't want to give her another reason to worry. Looking back, all those small signs line up like red flags on a map. At the time, they were just noise scattered across ordinary days, not urgent enough to push me into action. On the Friday night before that Saturday, I was in the garage tightening a hinge on the gun safe when I heard gravel crunch outside. By the time I stepped to the door, the sound was gone. The street lay empty under the porch lights, but the air felt heavier somehow. Sarah asked me later why I'd been so quiet at dinner. I told her I was just tired. The truth was, my mind kept replaying that gray Malibu crawling down our street. A man like me shouldn't have needed another reason to trust his instincts. The signs were there. Packages gone. Cameras dead. A car circling like a shark in shallow water. We just didn't know who was behind the wheel, or how close they already were. While we were busy second-guessing shadows, someone else was turning those shadows into a plan. His name was Richard Kane. On paper, he was the polished president of the Brookhaven Hills Homeowners Association, designer suits, perfect smile, the guy who never missed a handshake at the block party. In reality, he was a real estate predator, the kind who bought homes for half their worth after scaring owners into selling. I only learned the full story later, from a detective's file. Kane had been eyeing our street for months. He wanted to flatten a row of older houses, including ours, to make way for luxury townhomes. A few families refused to sell, us included. That's when he brought in muscle. He hired Troy Maddox, tall, broad-shouldered, thick-bearded, fired from mall security for roughing up a teenager. Troy, in turn, brought Cal Rivers, shorter, built like a brick wall, with a faded snake tattoo curling around his wrist. Their records were just clean enough to look respectable and just dirty enough for the work Kane needed done. The plan was simple. Use fear. Pose as HOA enforcement officers. Start with citations and warnings. Then escalate: broken fences, stolen mail, smashed cameras. Make people feel unsafe in their own homes until Kane could show up with a smile and an offer to help by buying them out. Neighbors at the far end of the block had already folded. The Johnsons packed up overnight, claiming they'd found a better school district. Now I know they'd been scared out. 2 other families took monthly cash envelopes just to stay quiet, explaining the averted eyes, the quick nods, the doors that closed too fast whenever Troy's beat-up Chevy Malibu rolled by. Kane never dirted his hand himself. He let Troy and Cal do the cruising, the intimidation, the late-night break-ins that left just enough ambiguity to keep the cops guessing. To outsiders, it looked like random petty crime. In truth, it was a slow siege. Sarah had sensed it long before I admitted it. She could feel the shift in the air, that quiet wrongness settling over the neighborhood. I hate that I brush her off. According to the detective's report, about a week before the attack, Kane met Troy in a roadside bar 2 towns over. The place smelled of stale beer and fried onions, lit by tired neon signs. The report described how Kane's cufflinks caught the amber light as he slid an envelope across the sticky bar top. That was the deal, sealed over cheap whiskey and unspoken threats. By the time I was tightening the hinge on my gun safe that Friday night, the arrangement was already in motion. Kane's final order was simple: 1 more incident. Something to shake us enough to make us consider selling. We were next on their list. We just didn't know it. By sunrise that Saturday, the trap was set. All it needed was the right moment and the right victim to spring. It should have been an ordinary morning. The sun threw long shadows across the cul-de-sac. The air carried the scent of cut grass and barbecue smoke drifting from a neighbor's yard. If peace had a sound, it was the soft hiss of water running off my truck's hood. Sarah was on her second trip from the SUV to the porch, balancing 2 grocery bags on her hip. That light blue sundress swayed just above her knees as the breeze teased at it. I was still rinsing soap from the tires, half watching her, half lost in the rhythm of water against metal. Then came the first wrong note, a shadow stretching across the edge of the driveway. I looked up, expecting a jogger. Instead, 2 men were walking toward us from the sidewalk. The one in front was tall, bearded, wearing a faded orange safety vest over a dark t-shirt. The other was shorter and thick-set, sleeves rolled high to reveal a smear of old ink wrapping his wrist, a snake or something like it. Both wore cheap sunglasses that hid their eyes, and the way they moved, slow, deliberate, set off a quiet alarm deep inside me. At first, I thought they might be utility workers, until the bearded one raised a plastic badge clipped to his vest, the kind you could print at a corner shop. His voice was sharper than the morning deserved. "Ma'am, you're in violation of HOA regulations." Sarah paused, shifting the bags higher on her hip. Her tone stayed polite but firm. "There's no HOA on this street." For a heartbeat, only a lawn mower buzzed somewhere down the block. Then the man took a step closer, his expression hardening, the mask slipping. "Multiple complaints," he said. "Unauthorized vehicles, trash violations, unapproved landscaping. We'll have to issue a fine." Even from where I stood, I heard the edge in his voice. Sarah's hand tightened on the grocery bag. "I think you've got the wrong address." For all I knew, they were just grifters bluffing their way into a score. But the way the bearded one squared his shoulders made me take a step forward. "I told you," she said, her voice steel now. "We don't have an HOA." That's when he reached for her. His hand shot out fast, fingers closing around her upper arm. "Hey!" Her gasp sliced through the morning. She tried to pull away, but his grip only tightened. Then it all happened at once. One grocery bag slipped, spilling milk and peaches across the driveway. The man shoved her back, just one hard push, but enough. Her foot caught the curb, and she went down in a blur of blue fabric and dark hair. The sound that followed, the crack of bone against concrete, wasn't loud, but it froze the air. For a heartbeat, I couldn't move. Sunlight flashed off the spilled milk glass. Water dripped from the hose I'd dropped. Sarah's breathing came sharp and ragged as she tried to sit up and couldn't. That's when I started forward, slowly at first, boots squelching in the puddle near the truck. With each step, something inside me tightened, winding like a rope around a post. Sarah tried to push up on one elbow and failed, clutching her side, a shallow cry breaking from her lips. At the station, the air smelled of coffee and old paperwork. Detective Holloway, lean and calm, slid a recorder across the table. "Tell it in your own words," he said. I did, from the missing packages to the push that broke Sarah's ribs to the shots that stopped the car. He listened, pen scratching quietly. When I finished, he clicked the recorder off. "Castle doctrine's clear," he said. "You were on your property. They assaulted your wife. You didn't fire at them. DA will review, but I don't see charges sticking." His words matched Halpern's almost exactly. By evening, local news had it everywhere. Homeowner stops fake attackers, 6 shots in 6 seconds. Grainy footage filled the screens. The Malibu spinning, Sarah on the ground, me with the rifle. Some call me a hero. Others called me reckless. Every call from family or friends felt like another trial. That night, the house was too quiet. Sarah was in the hospital. I sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through headlines until midnight when Holloway called. They found stolen mail, fake badges, and a handgun in the Malibu. "Good for your case," he said. "Bad for them." I thanked him, though the words felt hollow. Over the next few days, the noise didn't fade. Commentators argued about self-defense and restraint. Neighbors left casseroles or silence. I'd faced enemies before, but never judgment this heavy. When the DA finally called, my chest tightened. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and old paper. I hadn't sat at a defendant's table before, not like this. Halpern's calm steadied me. "We don't need to win hearts," he'd said. "We need to hold the law." Sarah sat behind me, ribs wrapped, eyes steady. The DA questioned my judgment, called me a trained veteran who could have disarmed them barehanded. I stayed silent. Halpern didn't. His words were measured and exact. Sarah's assault, the visible knife, the pepper spray, the attempted flight. He showed photos, stolen mail, fake badges, the gun under the seat. Then he played the video, a few seconds of chaos, Sarah clutching her sides, the Malibu jerked into motion. "Ladies and gentlemen," Halpern said, voice even but carrying through the room, "this wasn't a man looking for a fight. It was a husband forced into an instant choice. Stop armed men from escaping, or let them vanish to harm someone else. He chose to stop them cleanly, lawfully, and without firing at a soul." The jury watched the footage again. A few leaned forward, nodding almost imperceptibly. Then came the twist no one expected. The DA called Troy Hennon, the man who'd shoved Sarah. He walked in wearing an orange jumpsuit, eyes hard, voice edged with resentment. He admitted to posing as an HOA officer, but said the plan hadn't been his. He and Cal were hired, paid to scare homeowners. Halpern's tone turned sharp. "Who hired you, Mr. Hennon?" Troy shifted, his cuffs clinking. "A guy named Kane. Richard Kane. Met him at a bar near Westridge. Said the lady in the blue house was causing trouble. Told us to scare her a little." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Sarah straightened in her seat, eyes narrowing at the name. Richard Kane, head of the HOA, known for enforcing rules like they were commandments. Halpern held up printed text messages pulled from Troy's phone, each signed RK, giving addresses, amounts, and promises of no police problems. The judge allowed them in. The DA's confidence cracked. When Kane was brought in by subpoena, he tried to hide behind charm and denial, claiming the texts were fake, that he didn't know the men. But his voice betrayed him. Halpern pressed harder, producing a bank record showing a cash withdrawal that matched the payoff Troy had described. Then came security footage from the bar, grainy, but enough to show Kane passing an envelope across the table, his cufflinks flashing in the light. By the time he stepped down, his lies were unraveling fast. 2 days later, the jury came back. The DA dropped all charges against me, confirming my actions as justified under the Castle Doctrine. Troy and Cal were convicted of aggravated assault and attempted robbery. Kane was indicted for conspiracy and solicitation. When the verdict was read, I didn't feel victory, only release. Sarah's hand tightened around mine, her eyes shining with quiet relief. Outside, the reporters swarmed, shouting questions. Halpern steered us through the crowd, his calm unshakable. In the truck, Sarah leaned back, whispering, "It's over." I nodded, though both of us knew healing would take longer than any trial. The house grew still again in the weeks that followed. Sarah came home under a soft spring sun, moving slowly, each breath a reminder of what we'd survived. I learned the rhythm of recovery, pain meds on time, careful lift, steady hands. She teased me, calling me her overqualified nurse. Nights were hardest. When pain woke her, I'd be there, whispering that she was safe. By the time her ribs had mended, I decided to finish something. I sanded a small wooden board and carved the words with deliberate care. "This home is protected by righteous fury." I mounted it above the gun safe on the porch. Sarah traced the letters with her fingers. "It's not about anger," she said softly. I nodded. "It's about knowing the line and never letting anyone cross it again." That sign became more than a warning. It was a vow. Neighbors came by again, some with pie, some with awkward smiles. A few still crossed the street. I didn't blame them. Fear lingers where understanding doesn't. By midsummer, Sarah could laugh without pain. We hosted a small cookout, just a few friends, smoke and laughter mingling in the warm air. Normal had finally returned. Still, I kept certain habits, the rifle locked up, the key always near. Not out of fear, but readiness. Peace isn't something you assume. It's something you guard. On the last evening of August, we sat on the porch together, the sunset stretching gold across the cul-de-sac. Sarah rested her head against my shoulder, breathing easy again. For the first time, the sound of wind through the trees was only wind. I thought of something from my Navy days, trust your pointman's instincts. That morning, Sarah had been mine. I hadn't listened, and we'd paid for it. Now I understood. Trust isn't just love, it's survival. The sun caught the carved sign one last time before sinking away, its glow fading into shadow. We hadn't just survived that day. We built something stronger from it, a home forged from steel, love, and the quiet promise to keep both safe. The fight drained from them, all that swagger gone in an instant. I finally exhaled, lowering the muzzle slightly, but keeping the safety off. The M4 still felt solid, steady, like control. Behind me, Sarah's shallow breathing caught my ear. She was sitting up now, pale, eyes locked on me, the pepper spray can still dangling from her hand. Movement flickered at the edges of the street. Neighbors stood frozen on porches and driveways, some filming, others whispering. A child's bike lay abandoned on a lawn. Then came the sirens, faint at first, rising through the heat. I set the rifle to safe and held it low at my side, still between Sarah and the men. The street was littered with glass, tire smoke, and silence. Troy and Cal lay flat where I'd told them, their breaths shallow and uneven. Sarah shifted against the SUV, wincing, dust and grit streaking her dress. When her eyes met mine, there was pain, but no fear, only resolve. Mrs. Hollis appeared on her porch, hand over her mouth, phone clutched tight. Others followed, slippers, bathrobes, cell phones raised. Blue and red lights flooded the cul-de-sac as the first cruiser rolled in, siren dropping to a low wail. Another car and an ambulance followed. 2 officers stepped out, guns drawn but steady, eyes scanning from me to the suspects. I raised one hand, voice calm and clear. "Rifles on safe. I'm the homeowner." They attacked my wife. The older officer nodded, signaling his partner to cuff the 2 men. Troy and Cal didn't resist. If anything, they looked almost relieved. Paramedics moved to Sarah's side, checking her ribs. She caught my sleeve as they eased her onto the stretcher, whispering hoarsely, "I'm okay. Stay calm." I nodded, though calm felt far away. An officer eyed the rifle and the smoking Malibu. No judgment, just quiet understanding. Neighbors gathered in small clusters, murmuring. Some gave me small nods of respect. Others couldn't meet my eyes. The senior officer approached again. "You'll need to give a statement," he said. "But from what I see here, You did what you had to do. I finally lowered the rifle completely, resting it against the porch post. For the first time since Sarah fell, my hands were empty. The sirens faded to background hum as officers marked evidence and taped the street. The fight was done, but the reckoning had only started. They kept me there nearly 2 hours after the ambulance left. The young officer taking notes was polite but thorough. Time of first contact. Number of rounds fired. Any warning given? I answered each calmly. 2 men posing as HOA. Physical assault. Visible knife. 6 controlled rounds aimed to disable the vehicle. The senior officer checked with witnesses, then asked the question that mattered. Any shots fired at the suspects themselves? No, sir. All at the car. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. Before heading to the station, I called Mark Halpern, an old Navy contact, former JAG, now defense attorney. He picked up on the second ring. I laid it out, the assault, the gun, the 6 shots. His voice stayed level. Texas castle doctrines on your side. Keep answers short, stick to facts, don't speculate. That advice steadied me. At the station, the air smelled of coffee and old paperwork. Detective Holloway, lean and calm, slid a recorder across the table. Tell it in your own words, he said. I did, from the missing packages to the push that broke Sarah's ribs, to the shots that stopped the car. He listened, pen scratching quietly. When I finished, he clicked the recorder off. Castle doctrine's clear, he said. You were on your property. They assaulted your wife. You didn't fire at them. DA will review, but I don't see charges sticking. His words matched Halpern's almost exactly. By evening, local news had it everywhere. Homeowner stops fake attackers, 6 shots in 6 seconds. Grainy footage filled the screens. The Malibu spinning, Sarah on the ground, me with the rifle. Some call me a hero. Others called me reckless. Every call from family or friends felt like another trial. That night, the house was too quiet. Sarah was in the hospital. I sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through headlines until midnight when Holloway called. They'd found stolen mail, fake badges, and a handgun in the Malibu. Good for your case, he said. Bad for them. I thanked him, though the words felt hollow. Over the next few days, the noise didn't fade. Commentators argued about self-defense and restraint. Neighbors left casseroles or silence. I'd faced enemies before, but never judgment this heavy. When the DA finally called, my chest tightened. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and old paper. I hadn't sat at a defendant's table before, not like this. Halpern's calm steadied me. We don't need to win hearts, he'd said. We need to hold the law. Sarah sat behind me, ribs wrapped, eyes steady. The DA questioned my judgment, called me a trained veteran who could have disarmed them barehanded. I stayed silent. Halpern didn't. His words were measured and exact. Sarah's assault, the visible knife, the pepper spray, the attempted flight. He showed photos, stolen mail, fake badges, the gun under the seat. Then he played the video, a few seconds of chaos, Sarah clutching her sides, the Malibu jerked into motion. The glint of sunlight off the blade told me everything. Instinct screamed to close the distance, disarm him, end it before he moved, but Sarah was behind me, hurt and unable to run. If he slipped past, she'd have no chance. That thought rooted me in place. I needed a weapon. My eyes scanned the yard, the hose useless, gravel too far, the truck too far. Then I remembered the porch, the hidden safe behind the panel. 3 long strides. Cal's mouth twisted into a grin, sensing the calculation. He shifted, blade low, ready to spring. That was when a sharp hiss cut through the air. Sarah's trembling hand shot from her purse, pepper spray. The mist hit Cal full in the face. He staggered, bellowing, clawing at his eyes, knife wavering in his hand. Even half broken, Sarah had bought me seconds I couldn't waste. I moved. 3 strides to the porch. Every step was counted, every heartbeat measured. Cal's shoes scraped the concrete behind me, a predator's signal. I didn't look back. The porch loomed ahead, sunlight flashing across wet pavement. Combat habits took over. Move. Secure the weapon. Neutralize the threat. My fingers, slick from water, fumbled once before finding the latch. A twist, a click.